Poki is the current #1 brand on web. 700 million gameplays or so per month. We're currently at 65 million monthly active users. Revenue, how we split the earnings, it's kind of a completely different way of developing. Game development isn't just huge, big games to put on Steam and consoles. I'll show you later an example of 1 or 2 games that perform really, really well now. It's 72% conversion to play. It's also super, super strong. So we're in this together. Basically, as I said earlier, all of our developers are our partners.
Yes, precisely. These and many more topics were covered at the Poki Q&A. If you are interested in the web games market, if you're interested in releasing the game on Poki, then stay with me. Welcome back after a break, during which I was actually organizing an annual community game jam about making a game in Default, the Made With Defold Jam 2024. This year it was pumped up with amazing events in Default community. I invited 6 speakers to the scene to talk about games and game development, and now I want to present to you the first video with recorded but slightly post-edited presentation about Poki and one and only Poki Q&A. Denis, the developer relations manager at Poki, will speak about the leading platform for web games gathering monthly 65 million active players. If you want to release your game on Poki and make money out of this, turn your passion into a profitable business, even if you are a solo developer or a tiny game studio, Poki is one of the greatest choice out there, and the talk by Denis is filled with many interesting information. So without further ado, I invite you to the presentation and Q&A.
So I'll do a quick intro to myself maybe before we do that. So my name's Denis. I've been working at Poki now for about 3 years. I originally started as a QA on the QA side, but now I work as a developer relations manager. So all of the developers that we work with on Poki are our partners. So every partnership needs a partnership manager. Basically do anything they want, help them to get anything out of game development that they want is essentially, I guess, what I'm kind of looking for. So I'll do a quick intro. Maybe I can just turn off my camera and then try that. If you don't and you want to know a bit about it, then I'll go over a little bit here. If you already do, then this might just be some more information for you. So we'll just do a bit of what is Poki, who we are, why release on the web now, so why, I guess now over any other time in the past little while, and then some stuff about Poki for developers, which is our kind of developer platform. Poki is the current #1 brand on web. This means that we are kind of the leading web. So yeah. We have about 700 million gameplays or so per month. We're currently at 65 million monthly active users, but looking in the next year to kind of break the 100 million, which we're kind of looking forward to and expect it to happen. Also localized in 28 different languages, which for us is very, very important because our user base is worldwide. We have just as many players in the US and Europe as we do in Latin America and over in Asia. If anything, we have even potentially even more down in Latin America. And those countries, it's very difficult to get people to play games if it's not localized, so you need to really keep in mind localization when you're working. We're about 60 full-time employees now, based in Amsterdam, and we've been building the ultimate online playground on web since 2014. So officially this is our 10-year anniversary. However, the original Poki has actually been around since almost 2005, where one of our co-founders bringing it all together under the one Poki brand. So if you are French and you know je.fo, or if you're Turkish and you know 1001 oyun.tr, or there's a big one also down in Latin America and in Brazil. I can't remember it now. Some Juegos, something like that. Anyway, they were all from Boss, our co-founder, and then brought into Poki. And we're currently with about 500 plus developer community or so after however many years of working together. So when we are looking at Poki, we kind of have 3 big main points on a triangle, I guess. We'll see it now. So there's the player side of the business. We've got the developer side, which is for you guys, and then we've got the advertisers. So all of these kind of aspects are very important for us because we need to kind of balance each one in harmony with the other to keep the whole playground and the platform working and healthy for everybody. So it's not just the player side. We don't just take the developers or anything. We have to take all sides into account, which sometimes makes things difficult, but it is what it is. That's business, but it's fun and we enjoy doing it. So we're kind of happy to provide a nice service for all of these different kind of people. More stuff specifically about web. Flash games were almost Web 1.0, and then with when Flash died, people thought the web also died, but that's not actually true. Flash died, but HTML5 technology has always been on web. And now, especially in the last couple of years and really in the last year or two, things have really started to get a lot better with Web GPU coming out. Also, if you look at internet connections all over the world, devices all over the world, everything is getting faster and better, which means that, yes, like a lot of these players in countries that may have never really been able to play games before, now with just a phone and an internet connection, they can play anything. And a lot of the times their connection still may not be strong enough to fully download a game, or like either on their phone, maybe they don't have a PC or a console. That is really popular, especially in those kind of emerging markets, as we would call them. This is a little visualization. The actual original image is a lot bigger. Over the last couple of years, I think a lot of people have noticed some frustrations with the app stores, with Steam, with consoles, that it can be quite difficult to get any sort of user base for your game without deep pockets and UA budgets and everything. And there's a lot of really big companies and really big places that just can kind of take over the market a bit, whereas on web, it's still what we call a bit of a blue ocean, in that there's still quite a lot of space and quite a lot of freedom to really make something like yourself. You don't need to kind of have a ton of money to build up a game. You also don't need to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years on a big massive game. 2-3 months and a little bit of playtesting and testing it around, and you can get a game live on web that'll still be earning you a decent amount of money every month. So it's kind of a completely different way of developing that a lot of people haven't really thought about, in that sense that game development isn't just huge big games to put on Steam and consoles. Game development can also be these small fun experiences, if you want to go with those, that can also do just as well. And I'll show you later an example of 1 or 2 games that perform really well now in Defold, and you can see that it wasn't always the very first game that someone makes is a hit. It sometimes takes a couple of games to learn the platform and to learn kind of what's different about this compared to others. Some hit games on web. So Subway Surfers, you probably all know. If you don't know, then well, sounds like a you problem. But it's interesting that something like Subway Surfers is made by Sabo. Stickman Hook there on the far right is made by Mappa, and those are very large, big studios that have a large team and all that kind of stuff. But the middle 2 games, Monkey Mart, it's the first time you'll hear of it for this presentation, but not the last. It's a default game made by 2 brothers, and that was it. It's just the 2 of them. They made a game that also became such a big hit on Poki and on web that it almost rivals in some ways the other ones. Level Devil as well was made by a solo dev, and he's actually a part-time dev. So he has a family. He only does this on the side, and he was also able to make a game that performed really well and has become very popular as well. If you go into social media and those kind of things, really you'll see a lot of it. And the middle 2 games are made by solo devs, single team with 1 or 2 people, and the other 2 on the far right are made by big studios. So there's quite a lot of opportunities. You don't need to have, all you need to do is focus on making a fun game. So Poki for developers. So kind of one of our theme, or the goal behind the Poki for developers and the dev side of the business, is to empower independent developers to turn their game into a hit. And what this means is basically give the developers the tools and the support that they need to make their games a hit. And whatever we can do outside of actually developing the game itself, we want to do, and we want to help. So that's what our developer platform and all of our tools and kind of the entire developer side of the business is really aimed towards that specifically. How do you get your game onto web? I think people don't really know, and that's fair enough. For us specifically, and if you want to work with Poki, you add the SDK. Very simple. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 events, and that's about it. Playtest to build, also super easy. I'll go over a bit about the playtesting now as well. The deal terms, there'll also be a little bit more explanation in another slide or 2. QA review is a QA review. We do a QA. We'll give there's some requirements that we need. You can find the requirements on our SDK docs. It's sdk.poki.com. Super simple, and you can have a look at them, see what they're all about. And then we'll also give suggestions, those kind of things as well, specifically for the Poki audience at web. Soft launch, global launch, I think everybody knows what those are. If not, we also have a little bit on our SDK documentation about the release type. So playtesting, we notice that developers don't, and that's often because they don't have access to people to playtest their game. Super fair. Often it's because they don't know how important it is. Really helps you understand kind of pain points, especially when it comes to UX and more kind of the feeling things, less so much about stats and if you want to improve. So we have a new playtest feature that we've just kind of announced, and it's currently in early access, so we're still working through a lot of the kinks of it, which will give you free unlimited playtests with our audience directly. So all you need to do is upload a web build of the game and then add a bit of the SDK and then start getting playtests. And it's completely free. Yeah, that sounds good. It's going to be completely free forever. That's the plan, and you can do as many as you want. So we kind of want developers to start using this more from a very, very early stage, even just from if you have a prototype, a very basic one, but once the core loop of the game is in there, you can start getting play tests. Visually, yes, visual stuff matters also from a polish perspective, but if people will play a game, a very bare bones game for a long time, just because the actual core game loop is fun, then you know you've got something good on your hands. If they aren't playing it for very long, then you need to start tweaking. So we kind of are giving developers access to our user base and our players to really just start play testing their own thing and start making it work. I'm not 100% certain if that QR code works. I think we'll open it up slowly to more and more developers. At the moment, for the default community jam, you all have access to it. Please get in, have a look, try it out, see what you think. You can use it for your game jam games. You can also use it for other games if you have them, and just to try them out and see how it goes. Questions and for opinions and thoughts and stuff about it, because it's still early access. So feel free to have a look and throw some questions into the main Poki channel here. A little bit about the deal. So this is just kind of the main deal that we have, I guess, with most developers. So we take care of all the marketing and promotion of your game, not only on the platform, but also externally. So we'll do all UA, we do all the ads. And if anybody here knows about ads, we do DSPs and SSPs and all the kind of, we're doing it all anyway. So you don't have to worry about that. All you need to do is add the commercial break or rewarded break SDK event in your game at specific points. I will go over that. I think that was another question. And then we'll do everything else. You'll work with a Poki account manager, so that's me, to help improve not only your game, but also your studio and just generally the partnership. And then we'll also help improve the game with the extensive QA reports. So that'll be, again, suggestions, requirements, long-term shots, those kind of things. How we split the earnings, so 50% of the game's earnings when Poki refers a player to your game. So if someone comes to your game via promotions on Poki website, so when you open up a game, there's a lot of games all around it. If someone clicks on your game via those, we would consider that a Poki promotion. Alternatively, if someone lands on your game via ads that Poki have done, we will share 50% of the in-game revenue. But if a player lands on your game directly on Poki, so if you want to do influencer marketing, or if you want to do your own ad campaigns or your own whatever, and players land directly onto your game on Poki, then you get 100% of those earnings because you brought the player, so you get the revenue. That's basically how it feels. Up until now, everything has been 50-50, but we felt a little bit their own users and their own players to Poki and to their games on Poki, let's give them all the revenue for those players, because if you did the work, you get the revenue. That's essentially how that is. We're in this together. Basically, as I said earlier, all of our developers are our partners, which means we're in this kind of for the long run. It's not as much, okay, let's work on one game and then let's finish there. We prefer to work with people longer term and over a longer term period. We have two kind of things here from Blumgi, who reached 100 million players, 100 million gameplays in 2 years after having just gone indie on his own. So he was an animator originally and then left the company that he worked at, became a game developer using a different game engine, and in 2 years earned 100 million gameplays. And we're now 3 years, and I think he's pushing 200 already. So it can really, even as somebody who doesn't know how to code, which he doesn't, there's still game engines, and there's still ways to kind of get around it. And he understands web, he understands our platform and our user base, so therefore it works well. And if you've played any of his games, I think you'd understand why people like them so much. And then Onward Studio, developers of really cool games like Tribals.io or Venge.io, really, really sick. And they use the playtest a lot. We also have, if you go to, I think it's blog.poki.com or medium.com/Poki, we have our own blog, a little blog with some information. And there's one specifically from Cem Demir, who's the owner of Onrush, about everything about how they use the playtesting and all that kind of stuff. And it's quite in depth. I would highly recommend looking into it because it's really, really interesting to see how he does it. Default on Poki. It's just a very short 1 or 2 slides. So the third biggest engine on Poki, we've about 90 or so games live at the moment, about 1.5 million daily gameplays from those games, and averaging about 66% conversion to play. So conversion to play is basically our way of checking the tech performance of your game. So it's basically how many players out of all of the ones who click on your game actually make it into the game. So it's quite important for us because our user base, as I mentioned before, is very focused on accessibility, ease of access for players, because we have players all over the world with many different internet connections and all different device qualities, that it's really important for us that players can get in and start playing games as quickly as possible. Games that players can play are ones that are kind of shown to players a little bit more. So this is kind of across devices. So this is both mobile, tablet and desktop. I can have a look maybe specifically. I think desktop is a little bit higher, maybe more towards 70%, which basically means, well, for this 66% conversion to play, it means that the other 44% of players don't actually get into the game. So either they quit before or they actually can't load the game, those kind of things. The second engine, I believe, is Construct. Then the Poki and Defold partnership. So I don't know how many of you actually know. I hope a lot of you. But Poki and Defold we have an official partnership together. A little bit specifically more at helping the guys kind of improve the HTML5 part of the engine. We understand, and I think we've through a lot of conversations with the team, the 3D is also getting a lot better and everything. And as an engine itself, it's already showing to be really good. And even before we started talking with the Defold guys, we already knew that this was a good engine. So we're really, really happy to be kind of working together. We're kind of exploring some engine integrations as well, so directly to Poki, and then also helping understand the Defold guys with like the conversion to play, and basically helping them understand how we track the tech and how we can potentially improve it going forward. We're working together, so we can kind of help out if anyone needs anything. So you can always ping us if there's anything you're looking for. And then a little bit of some games. Obviously, I think you've heard Monkey Mart a couple times already today. I know that there's also Punch Legend Simulator, which is also on Poki. I didn't want to do it here because I know that there was already a presentation on it, but that game is also performing very well. I think you probably have seen from the presentation, so we're very happy about that. That's super nice. So I'll start with Monkey Mart. As I think I said before, created by Tiny Dobbins. It's a two brothers small team. Their first game isn't guaranteed to go really, really, really well. It often takes a couple games to kind of also learn the platform, that Poki and web are different platforms compared to like app stores or compared to Steam and console. So every single one requires different UX changes. The actual user base is different, so they like different things compared to other ones. So if you kind of copy and paste your game from the mobile store straight to web, it won't guarantee success. There will have to be some changes, and I think it took a couple of games for these guys also to kind of figure out what those changes are. They also have now accumulated 300 million gameplays to date, so that's in about 2 years. 300 million is not bad. And then I think the thing that really kind of helps is that they've released 5 marts. So since releasing the game, they've updated the game 5 times with big updates, and each one has kind of not really revived the game, but just brought the game back up into people's minds. And if you look at the homepage, and if you have looked at the Poki homepage, any of the Poki homepages over the last year, you'll see that it's been doing really, really well. And again, the conversion to play is super high, which is also another reason why it's going well. Fish Eat Fish is a 1-player or 2-player or 3-player local multiplayer. Super nice game, originally released in January 2022 by Indiesoft, and this was, I think, one of their better performing ones so far. It's so far accumulated 65 million gameplays. What I think is really interesting about this one is, although this game was originally released in January of 2022, it's also default. They didn't update the game, I think, until November, December of January the year after. And then like each time they've updated the game since, most recently July of 2024. And you actually see now on the homepage, you can now see it over here on just to the right of the player thing, which shows that this is the first time it's been on the homepage in a while. But because they've updated the game and really kept it running, it's now getting onto the bigger tiles. And again, it's 72% conversion to play. It's also super, super strong. So they increased their total users about 85%. So from about 70k gameplays per day to about 130, all because of this one update. Well, not this one update, but continuous updates over the past, I think, like 4 or 5 months or so, which has shown really, really, really positive for them. So also super happy to see RTM and the guys doing well again. So happy days. And that's pretty much it from our side. I think I was just more of a quick overview of everything to show you kind of what Poki is and everything. But I think now I'll open up to some questions. We already have some. I guess I'll take the first one there from Pavel, just because it's, I guess, there. What's it take to be on the main page? So we have different home pages based on language. So there's a poki.com/en, there's a poki.com/f4.tor, all those kind of things. And each one has a recommender based on what games are most popular in that geo or in that language kind of region, I guess. So for Portuguese, it's both Portugal and Brazil, that kind of stuff. So what gets onto the main page is a mix of like different kind of stats that basically show us that the that the players like your game more than anything. So it's all organic. It's all completely based on stats, on all user interests. So the games that are on the biggest tiles are generally the ones that the users like the most. And although I think people have asked, is there like a position bias then, that day over day, do those games just stay there? And no, if you kind of see the homepage, you'll see that it does actually change quite often, and it changes based on, I think it's day over day or changes. So if we see that all of a sudden a game has skyrocketed and become super popular, that game will get on the bigger tile. The bigger the tile, the more popular the game, essentially. So we don't handpick any of those games. Back in the day we may have, but not anymore, because it's all based now on the users. We basically are trying to give developers more ability to test their games on web and get like more actual stats to see how the game performs, but that's not fully ready yet. So we're really focused on the play testing at the moment. Integrations, features, multiplayer stuff. Yeah, this is all, I think, we started this playtesting stuff at the beginning of the year for GDC, and we're ironing it all out. There's quite a lot in it. Also, when it comes to the new 100% on landings, the new revenue thing, that's, as you could possibly imagine, trying to figure out what counts as an organic landing versus what counts as a Poki promoted landing and everything, and revenue sharing. There's a lot of data, in there. So that's all being dealt with, but it's just going to take a little bit of time, and then we'll see where we go from next year. Multiplayer games, I wouldn't say they're guaranteed to be more popular than single player games. I think both have a lot of like merit. I mean, you see that game has never had multiplayer, and there's no plans for multiplayer, I don't believe, and yet it's become one of the most popular games on Poki. So I think the most important thing is really focusing that if you want to make a multiplayer game, make a fun multiplayer game. If you want to make a single player game, make a fun one. For me, I always tell developers now that the core game loop is the most important thing. So as long as the core loop of the game is fun, people will be able to play it. And whether that core game loop involves other players in a multiplayer setting or it doesn't, that's also fine. We also have like local multiplayer games have always worked on web, and they still work now. Yeah, good practices for putting on ads. Just only putting commercial breaks when players are going into the next game, as opposed to when they finish the last game. So let's say you have a level-based game. Instead of firing a commercial break as soon as they finish one level, fire it literally only a half a second later when they start the next level, because when they finish a level and then you fire an ad, they may quit off and leave. But if they are actively going to choose to go into the next level, then they may stay and play a game or watch the ad. So it's just a small UX things like that. You kind of think of the user flow as opposed to just firing it. And also I'd kind of avoid like super big pop-ups and things that get in the player's way, because that'll kind of take them out of the immersion. Monkey Mart legitimately has incredible, I think really good like rewarded break options and everything. So I would check them out and see how they do it, and they don't feel intrusive or annoying at all in my experience. We don't have like minimums. We have, I guess this actually possibly answers another one, yeah, the best practices stuff. We also think that having UX unfriendly, let's say, ads will harm not only the developer themselves, but also the platform, which means it harms other developers. So if the whole platform has bad ads, let's say, then all players will see those bad ads, and it's not nice. And no one really wants that. They won't play on Poki, which means that negatively impacts everybody else. If you ever want to play a game on Poki, you will never see an ad. You'll always be able to just click it and then go straight into the game. When it comes to mid-roll ads, so the kind of interstitial, the more forced ads, we have a 2-minute timer between all of them. So no player will see 2 forced ads within 2 minutes of each other. But we also prefer developers to use rewarded ads, because then users prefer it, because they are also actively choosing to watch an ad and then they get something out of it. Also, those rewarded breaks, they reset that 2-minute timer. So it's possible for you to only really fire rewarded breaks, or you can kind of strategically, if you play Monkey Mart, you'll really see they do it really well and very unintrusively, that when you need an extra, let's say 30 money or whatever they use in the game, a little pop-up on the top left will come up saying like, watch this rewarded break to get 50 or to get 100 or whatever. And that's very unobtrusive. It's not in the way. The player feels, okay, cool, I get to watch this. They watch the ad, they get their money, and then that 2-minute timer now gets reset. So then they don't get seen. So no ad will be forced on them for another at least minimum 2 minutes. If they then watch another rewarded ad after a minute and a half, then they're all good to go again, and then it just keeps on going. Submitting to release on Poki, at the moment we have our submission/sharing form, so you can kind of just share your game with us. The playtest flow is that the second stage will be kind of it'll tell us how well the game actually performs. I think the most important thing for me is generally a quality level. If it's super early, or if the quality just doesn't feel like the same kind of quality of some of the other games, if it's still very much a template, those kind of things, because we want people to kind of think of web as a legitimate platform for game development and not just another place to put your game, if that makes sense, because our players can kind of sniff a game that they don't really like from very far away, and then it's very difficult to kind of bring the game back unless you really work at it loads and loads and loads with updates and stuff. So I'd really just focus on making a nice, fun, small, well, it doesn't even have to be a small game, but just a nice experience, and then we can worry about polish and all that stuff afterwards. But the core game loop, I think, is also super important, that if we play a game and we don't find it fun, it's going to be very difficult for the players to also find it fun. It's not KPI based at the moment. I wouldn't focus so much on KPIs, because also, like, where are you going to get those KPIs from? Like, if you're going to give us the KPIs from like the mobile app stores, it's a completely different user base, and they have very, very different, like, how they track stats and everything. Like, so telling us that your game has 4 hours engagement on the mobile app stores doesn't really translate to 4 hours on web. So it's quite difficult in that sense. So I wouldn't focus too much on KPI stuff. I'd more focus on the game. Revenue is different to a lot of other places because we're ads based. So CPMs vary depending on what country you're in. We can kind of still do benchmarks and give some kind of examples of what we think is possible. So we have, I guess, the median revenue for kind of out of all of the developers that we share revenue with, I think the median would kind of like about 1,600 or so per developer per month. And that's kind of more for like slightly above average. So it doesn't mean that you're like really, really incredible or anything. It's kind of, if you can make a kind of a nice game, a nice fun game, then we're good. So I guess the different success rate, let's say around 1,600 per developer. That's on a developer level, not a game level. Then we have kind of a good game. So what we would consider like a kind of a successful game would earn kind of the next bracket up then from that 1,600 break is about 6K. And that obviously doesn't always include one game. That can include multiple games, but it kind of goes from around for like some of the smaller developers, let's say 1,600 per month. Some a bigger developer, maybe with some, let's say two or three maybe kind of successful games, maybe four moderately successful games, let's say something like that. You can get 6K. So I think, so let's say a successful game is between 50 and 150K per year. And a really, really successful game, the big hits would be more like 500K plus or so. But that really kind of goes up, and that is growing every year. I wouldn't say they're numbers you can only dream about. Those are numbers that, I mean, the 1,600 is literally the median on Poki, so it's very doable. Those big numbers are also very possible, but I think it does require a bit of a knowledge and a bit of a buy-in to Poki and to the web. It's kind of up to you how much you guys kind of want to put into it and really learn about it. It is difficult. I'm not going to say that this is easy. Also, like, we are web and everything is a platform just like any other platform, so it's just as difficult to make things work on web as it is anywhere else. But I think it's easier that you just kind of have to worry about making a fun game in that sense, and we can kind of take care of the rest of it. Steam developers on Poki. Let's say we have a lot of developers who all have Steam links. We can foresee that a lot of the players will just come to web, find the game, move to Steam, and then not stay on web, which is good for those developers who now get the wish list, but it's bad for the rest of our developers who are put a lot of time into web and into the web part of their business. And because Poki is a web game platform, we want to keep players on web. That's kind of how we deal with it. Although we do have some, and you could always add something like full game on Steam, something in the game. Yeah, UA is user acquisition. So we do all the ads. If you ever see an ad on the web for Poki or for a game specifically, that's us. So we deal with all of that for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Otherwise, yeah, I think a Steam demo is possible, but if your game is very much a demo, players won't play it. So I think we have a super hot demo from years and years ago, and although it's nice, it's quite short, it's not really properly monetized, they haven't taken into account a lot of the features maybe for web specifically, and that's nothing on them. This was from God knows how long ago, 4 or 5, 6 years ago, or however long it is, so it kind of makes sense. If you make your demo and change it specifically for web and make sure that there's enough content in there, then I think, yeah, it can work, but players will sniff a demo from a mile away just to put something up on Poki just to try and see how it goes, but their main focus was still Steam or elsewhere. But then the money that they earned off the game on Poki ended up helping either help with the overall development of the game or any of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of nice to start off. It's possible. It just kind of, I guess depends. Depends on again, like anything, depends on how much you put into it. Yeah, the full screen mode is something that we take on a game by game basis. We do add it to some games, but not all games, mainly because we add it if we think that it helps with the immersion or any of that kind of stuff, but not always, because not every game needs it, I guess. Roblox, it's a bit of a competition. I think there's some crossover sometimes with like user base in games. It is still different in that you still how I kind of have to download stuff or whatever for Roblox, Poki and web is still completely open. But yeah, it's a little bit. We're keeping an eye on it anyway, but it's yeah, we're not expecting it to completely take over web just yet. Yeah, so the mobile app of Poki actually is as far as I know, it's either just a link or you open it up and then it just opens up Poki in the browser, or I think it's more of a discoverability platform where you can just see other games. I would maybe just like download it, have a look or whatever, but I think it might just be more of a discoverability thing on Poki, so you can see games and find games, that kind of stuff. We don't actually, so none of the games that are in the Poki mobile app are the actual official versions, because if we had the official games in our app, then those developers would not be allowed to put those games on the app stores themselves because of copyright, or because that's how the app stores work, ads, or we don't actually have any stuff in those games, so developers can kind of do their own thing. Yeah. Oh yeah, one more thing about Fish Eat Fish. They use the live update feature in Defold, which has been really, really helpful for them to help like improve the conversion to play by, I think they only load they load most of the game at the very, very beginning. Because of the way that they do it, it's actually 4 megabytes initial download size and then an extra whatever it is, 10 or so afterwards. But always look at initial download size. It's more important than total file size, because obviously the initial download, if a player just has to download a small couple megabytes for a game as opposed to the entire thing at the beginning, and then they can like lazy load the rest of the game, and that's super handy. I think if you're going to look to work on web, I would highly recommend checking that out. Okay. lots of speaking. Or maybe I'll do one of these so we can do a look bye. Hello. I'm sweating a lot. But yeah, thanks. This was the first time I did this, so I have no idea if it was interesting or anything, or if you got what you wanted out of it. We're always around. Feel free to let me know if you have other questions. Keep an eye on Poki's stuff. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. If anything, we're just going to get bigger. That's kind of the plan, and so far, so good. So yeah, sick. Shout out Default. Hell yeah. Thank you guys for making a sick engine. Thank you for hosting this, Pavel. I really appreciate it. It was super nice to be here. It was the first time I've done something like this, so let's see how it goes. Go Default. Hell yeah. And good luck in the jam. We'll check out the games and we'll see if anything fits. Bye. Poki.